So, Namaskaram, Prabhujis and Matajis. Welcome to episode 11, the Rajasuya Yagna and the follow-on impact, and our discussion on what value is worry. So, is there a value in worry? Does it do something good for you, or does it make you feel anxious and troubled? So, we will look at that. So, the topics for today: the assignment of Bhavarika and symbology, which we have just completed a few minutes ago. Rajasuya Yagna, which we're going to discuss in greater detail now. And then Shishupal, who was a sworn, he swore himself to be Krishna's enemy. Krishna has no enemies, but Shishupal swore himself to be Krishna's enemy, and he is eliminated. And Duryodhana and Shakuni start planning. They got really jealous of how wonderful Indraprastha was, so they started planning their scheme so that they could eliminate the power of the Pandavas. And then the follow-on impact, planning. They started planning. Basically, Shakuni started planning the game of dice. Vedic wisdom, what value is worry? So that's the plan for today. So the Rajasuya Yagna preliminary review, just a quick repeat of what we completed in the last satsang. At Indraprastha, Narada had advised Yudhishthira to perform the Rajasuya Yagna, and by doing that Yagna, Yudhishthira would declare himself to be the undisputed emperor of Bharat. So Yudhishthira then asked Sri Krishna for his advice. He says, look, Narada has advised me this. What do you think, Sri Krishna? So Krishna says, yes, it's a good idea. But remember, Jarasandha is not going to agree with this. He will not accept you as emperor. So you have to take care of Jarasandha first. So what does Yudhishthira do? He sends Bhima over to Jarasandha's kingdom, and Bhima disguises as a Brahmin, and he goes to the kingdom of Magad, where Jarasandha was presiding. And Jarasandha used to fight regularly in his kingdom with whoever would challenge him. It was a wrestling match to death. So it was his way to stay fit. So Bhima challenges Jarasandha, and Jarasandha thought that he definitely would win because he's fighting against a Brahmin, and Brahmins are not designed to fight like Kshatriyas. So Jarasandha got into a wrestling match with Bhima, and Bhima basically eliminated him. So the Rajasuya Yagna was a sacrifice performed by ancient kings those days to be declared the king of kings, basically the emperor. So it required Yudhishthira to win over all the other kingdoms, either by friendship or war. So with the exception of Jarasandha, which was basically by war, every other kingdom, basically they won them over through friendship. So the Rajasuya Yagna took place in Indraprastha, and many kings from all the neighboring kingdoms were invited. From Hastinapur, the entire leadership came. Bhima, Dhritarashtra, Dronacharya, Kripacharya, Duryodhana, and Shakuni, they all attended the Rajasuya Yagna. Vyasadeva also visited with Shishupal and others to witness the Rajasuya Yagna. So they all big entourage. Duryodhana was in awe. He was shocked at how the Pandavas had converted Kandaprasth to Indraprasth. He was truly amazed by the palace that they had. Okay, he was in awe to see how prosperous Indraprastha had become. He was also filled with envy about the magical assembly that Mayasur, remember, Mayasur was the one who designed the palace on instructions from Indra. So during the Rajasuya Yagna, Sri Krishna was made the chief guest by Yudhishthira. So Yudhishthira asked Sri Krishna, says, can you be my chief guest? By being the chief guest, he then had to personally invite all the kings into the palace and to show them their places of temporary residence while they were visiting Indraprastha. So Lord Krishna was very happy to accept that assignment. So here Shishupal is eliminated and Duryodhana is insulted. So Shishupal, who was Krishna's cousin, he was Vasudev's and Kunti's sister's son. Okay, Shishupal made many insulting comments on Sri Krishna. So he said, why is it a milkman is made the chief guest? And he made many other insulting comments about Krishna, saying that actually he's a cow herder, he's not even a king, and he's been given such an elevated position. Dhritarashtra should have been the chief guest, etc., etc., etc. So Krishna basically warned him, and he said, if you reach 100 insults of me, I will use my Sudarshan Chakra and chop your head off. But Shishupal didn't care, and he kept on insulting Lord Krishna. So after 100 insults, Sri Krishna released his Sudarshan Chakra, and basically Shishupal's head was chopped off and he died on the spot. And this was right in front of the entire assembly. So while the learned in attendance, so the learned were the gurus, Dronacharya, Kripacharya, Bhishma, grandfather Bhishma, they saw the wonder of the Lord. Okay, they applied their logic and they witnessed the power of the Supreme Lord. But those in defiance of Lord Krishna thought it was a magic trick performed by some charlatan milkman. This Dodwala, he has done some magic and this person now has been killed. So you see the different interpretations from two different groups. So after the yagya was performed, while Duryodhan was exploring the palace, because he was really amazed by how beautiful the palace was, he actually mistook a lake of crystal water for ground that he could walk on. And so he fell into that little pool of water with his clothes on. Seeing this, the mighty Bhima and Arjun, and the both twins, Nakul and Sahadev, they all laughed at Duryodhan because he fell into that pond of water. And Duryodhan was a person who could insult other people, but he could not take being insulted by anyone. And I'm sure we have met many people in our lives who are like that, who can make jokes about other people, but when other people make a joke about them, they get very annoyed. So Duryodhan was in that category. So now he's been made fun of, he's wet, all his clothes are wet, and here the Pandavas are laughing at him. So Duryodhan couldn't put up with the insults, he could not bear with the laughter they had. So while he concealed his emotions, he swore that he would take revenge. So on his way back to Hastinapur with Shakuni and Karan, because Karan also came, Duryodhan expressed his unbearable jealousy of the Pandavas' prosperity. He expressed it to Karan, he expressed it to Shakuni. Duryodhan made it clear that he would rather die than tolerate the opulence or the wealth of his much hated cousins. Shakuni advised him that military conquest was out of the question. Shakuni told Duryodhan, if we go to war with the Pandavas, we will lose. They are too powerful. There is no way we will win. But Shakuni told Duryodhan, I know weakness. You must know the enemy's weakness, and through that weakness, we can get the kingdom, but not through war. If we go through war, we will lose. So Yudhishthira had a liking for the game of dice, but he was useless at the game of dice, but he was basically addicted to it. And Shakuni definitely knew about it. So he was inexperienced in the game of dice, but he loved playing it. Shakuni declared to Duryodhan that he was an expert dice player and he could cheat Yudhishthira in gambling and winning away Yudhishthira's entire empire. So what did Shakuni do? Very smart. He had in fact laid the seed of asana in Yudhishthira's mind while he was in Indraprasth. What he did was, he went into a small game of dice with Yudhishthira by betting a small wager of his gold chains, okay, on a one-time game of dice, which he willingly lost to Yudhishthira. So he lost the game of dice to Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira was very happy. He had won his gold chains from his uncle. And basically Shakuni then left back for Hastinapur. So this set the trap. The trap was set for now Yudhishthir accepting another game of dice with his Mamaji in the future. Okay? So this was the trap which was set. So the game of dice, basically the stage is set. Duryodhana was filled with rage with the Pandavas for insulting him. What we can learn from this is another one. No matter how rich and powerful we are, if we see somebody in trouble or in an embarrassing situation, the last thing we should do is to make fun of them, laugh at them. Never. Because karma will play its little game back on us. If we see somebody in an embarrassing situation, we should try to alleviate that person's embarrassment and say, like, for example, in this case, instead of the Pandava brothers laughing at Duryodhana because he fell into the lake of water, they should have said, "Oh, brother, really sorry you didn't realize this. There was a pond of water here. Let us get you a new set of clothes right away. Please forgive us for this thing, what has happened to you. Let us get you." If they had made that approach, Duryodhana's fury, of course, he covered his emotions, but that fury would have immediately melted. You see, so that's what could have been alleviated. But again, this is a lesson for all of us to learn. So Shakuni had given Yudhishthira an air of confidence in his ability to play dice with his uncle. So Yudhishthira actually thought he was better at dice than his uncle. So Shakuni wanted Hastinapur and its extended kingdom, including Indraprasth, to be destroyed by a sure means. In Shakuni's evaluation, a direct warring conflict was not the way because he was aware of the superiority of the Pandavas. So he thus wanted the Pandavas killed either accidentally, like in the house of wax or the palace of wax, or removed from the position of power, either way. So this would thus leave the kingdom eventually to Duryodhana, because Duryodhana would succeed Dhritarashtra as the king, and he knew that Duryodhana was a useless administrator and he would be Shakuni's puppet. And Duryodhana's poor administration would lead to self-destruction. And that is what Shakuni wanted. And remember, Shakuni bore this grudge against the Pandavas and the Kauravas because his sister was basically forced to marry Dhritarashtra. So he carried this grudge all the way. Shakuni only wanted the destruction of that family, the family both of the Pandavas and the Kauravas. And if Duryodhana became king, he would self-destruct. So the powerful people are the Pandavas, we will take the power from them. So this was Shakuni's wonderful grand plan. So Dhritarashtra was not an obstacle in Shakuni's scheme, as Dhritarashtra was also blinded by his love for his son, Duryodhana, and the need to eventually, he had to hand over the throne to Duryodhana. So the game of dice, the paralysis of the elders. Bhishma and Vidur were advisors on the side of Dharma to the kingdom, but their influence would be of no consequence. There were all these great teachers on the side of the Kauravas. You had Dronacharya, you had Kripacharya, you had grandfather Bhishma. The Pandavas had their own kingdom. Bhishma and Vidur were also materially obligated to the kingdom and put up with Duryodhana's aggressive nature. Basically, over time, the gurus, Drona and Kripacharya, in Shakuni's estimation, had overgrown their usefulness, as the top students, the Pandavas, would now eventually be rendered harmless or eliminated. And their lesser students, the Kauravas, had reached the stage of commanding the guru's allegiance. Basically, rather than the Kauravas listening to the gurus, they were telling them off. It started in a small way, but it grew until such that the gurus were just figureheads. Nobody was listening to them. The Kauravas were not listening to their gurus, neither were they listening to grandfather Bhishma. Okay? So Shakuni planned the game of dice well. It resulted in the aggressors who were Duryodhan, Dushashan, and Karan leading the charge at any cost. Yudhishthir was being lulled into a trap. The Dharmic code of conduct led to Yudhishthir's brothers in not speaking up against their eldest brother's miscalculation. The deafening silence on part of the elders. Why was Dronacharya, Kripacharya, and Bhishma not speaking up to stop that cheating game of dice in the palace hall where the game was being played it was according to years. It happened because of years and years of diminishing influence and their tolerance of adharmic activities. It's just like we have laws and the enforcement agencies are not enforcing those laws. What happens over a period of time? The citizens say, you must be fools to follow the laws because the administrators do not enforce the laws. So after a while, it's free for all. So basically that was the case. The gurus were being spoken against. After a while, the gurus basically gave up. They wouldn't give any more advice. So the Gang of Four's only big miscalculation. The Gang of Four here are Duryodhan, his uncle Shakuni, Karan, and Duryodhan's brother Dushashan. This is the Gang of Four. Their miscalculation was Lord Krishna's intervention. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4.8, Lord Krishna tells us to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, which means to destroy the miscreants, those who misbehave, as well as to re-establish principles of religion. I myself appear millennium after millennium. So this was the big miscalculation on part of the Gang of Four. Okay. So just a quick review here on Rajasuya Yagna and Game of Dice. Just a few questions. Anyone can please unmute and give the answer. Name a few prominent people from Hastinapur that were present at the Rajasuya Yagna. Jashan Prabhuji, would you like to try? Even you name one person is good enough.
Yudhishthir.
Yudhishthir, Yudhishthir. Of course he was there.
Bhishma Pitama, Dhritarashtra.
Very good, Prabhuji. Anyone else want to give any other names? So remember, the entire Kauvara clan were there, okay? All the gurus, Dhritarashtra, our whole gang, everyone was there. Even Shakuni was there. So these were among the many people were there. And also Shishupal, don't forget, Shishupal was there because he got his head chopped off. Who was considered the chief guest at the yagna? Surely you know this.
Is it Dhritarashtra?
No, chief guest. That means the
Krishna?
Krishna, Lord.
No, Krishna.
Lord Krishna was the chief guest. Basically, he was in charge of inviting everybody to the palace and showing them their places of residence during their stay. Okay. Why was Shishupal eliminated?
He insulted Lord Krishna 100 times.
Yes. And very good. I forgot to mention something to you, Prabhuji said, Mataji. Shishupal is also the third appearance of that god called Jaya. You know, there's Jaya and Vijaya. So the first appearance of Jaya was as Hiranyaksha. Then he came again as in Lord Ram's time. Who was it? Who was the villain in fighting with Lord Ram? Who stole his wife? Ravana. So Jaya came as Hiranyaksha. He then
Hiranyakashyap.
as Ravana, and during Krishna's time he came as Shishupal. Same god. Okay.
Nice.
and describe the embarrassing experience that Duryodhan had at Indraprasth.
He
Prabhuji,
fell
Prabhuji, I
into
want
the water.
Yes, I think both of you spoke at the same time, but yes, basically he fell into a pool of water. Okay. And describe
may I add one more point here, which I heard is like because also Draupadi, she also said that blind son of the blind father.
okay. Prabhuji, I'm glad you mentioned it. You know, there are two schools on this. Did she or did she not say, you're a blind son of a blind king? Did she or did she not? This jury is out. That's why I didn't mention it. You see, if we that the argument against her saying it is, if she was so well cultured by Draupadi, she would not have made such a statement, because it is a very insulting statement to call a son of a blind king is also blind. You know, it's very, very insulting. Laughing is a different matter, but to make that insulting statement in the version of the Mahabharata that I read, it's not there. But in the movies and also the TV series, yes, it is there. So that is why I didn't mention it.
Okay.
Now, describe the factors that led to the plot of game of dice being hatched. So basically, I'll summarize it. I'm looking at the time. I'm very worried. Basically, their vasana was planted. The vasana was planted by Shakuni by purposely losing his gold chains in a small wager. Okay, and what were the factors that contributed to the elders being paralyzed at the game of dice? This one I leave it to you to answer. Why were they paralyzed? Why didn't they speak up?
Over the years, they have lost actually their the respect to the grown-up Kauravas.
Correct. So what
they kept silence many times.
Correct. So there's a very big lesson for all of us to learn here. If we are a parent or we are holding a responsible position, and if we don't uphold the ethics, after a while, everything goes. Everything will happen, and we will have no more say because we allowed the unethical situation to develop. So whether we're working in the office, whether we are a parent or we're holding another position of responsibility somewhere else, upholding the ethical qualities is very, very important. If we let our guard down, eventually everything goes. And this is the lesson that we can learn from this situation. Okay, who were the gang of four and what was their big miscalculation? Anyone? The big miscalculation was Krishna, correct. And who were the gang of four?
Dhritarashtra, Sakuni, was it
Duryodhana and his brother.
Duryodhana and his brother, yes.
Okay. Dhritarashtra wasn't one of the four. Okay. It was Karan. Karan. So it was Duryodhan, his brother, their uncle Shakuni, and Karan. They were the gang of four. Okay, so well done, well done. So now we will shift gears. Now we will see how much we can complete because this is a very heavy topic. I must warn you, this is a very heavy topic. Gurudev taught it to us some time ago. So we all took notes and we basically now are very happy to share this knowledge with you. So what value basically does worry bring us? If we cannot conclude all the slides today, we will continue with the next session. So don't worry. So Vedic wisdom, what is worry? So worry, basically, we look at Western science. We will now do a very good summation of what we learn from the Western science and also the Vedic science. Okay, and you see that it actually merges. It's the same thing. So worry is what happens when your mind dwells on negative thoughts, uncertain outcomes of things that could go wrong. So that's why you worry. I'm not so sure if this happens, what will happen if this? So all these worries come. So worry tends to be repetitive. You notice when you have a problem, you keep on thinking about it again and again. When you're having your shower, you're thinking about it. You're brushing your teeth, you're thinking about it. So that worry festers. It's repetitive, it's obsessive thoughts. And this is according to Melanie Greensburg. She's a clinical psychologist at Mill Valley, California. And she's the author of this book called The Stress-Proof Brain. Okay, and which she authored in 2017. So what we think about an uncertain or unpleasant situation, such as being unable to complete a project on time. We all of those of us who have a job, we are always concerned when we have a project, can we complete it on time? Or doing badly in a performance appraisal when it comes to every March or April, when it's time for a performance appraisal, are we going to get a good remarks from our bosses? So our brains now become stimulated because these are all uncertain and unpleasant situations. So worry should be, the recommendation is worry should be channeled to problem solving or taking action, both of which are positive things. So for example, to get a good performance appraisal, rather than worrying about it, if we perform well throughout the year, when the performance appraisal is going to be conducted, we are looking forward to it because it's a positive thing. And we have been happy with our own performance. So we can channel it in that way. So even with a project, so if we keep on working on that project, and if we need more time, we don't tell the boss at the last minute that you need an extension. As the project is going along, you keep your boss informed, and then if you really realize that because of resources and time constraints, you need an extension, then you inform him or her, then you are channeling it in a positive way. So it doesn't become a worry anymore. It becomes positive. So another doctor mentioned this, Dr. Luana Marquis explained that it's not only when we get stuck thinking about a problem that worry stop being functional, because worry is actually something which can be good for us, because if we are worried about getting a good performance appraisal, we will do something to make sure we get a good appraisal. If we are worried about a project, we would work on that project to make sure it's completed on time or we get an extension. So then it is functional. But if we keep on thinking about it but not doing anything about it, then it is not functional anymore. So all these are explanations of what worry is. If that is what worry is, then what is stress and what is anxiety? So worry is what happens when our mind is dwelling on negative thoughts, uncertain outcomes, or things that could go wrong. Okay, this is the negative outcome of worry, the mind working overtime. Stress, on the other hand, is a physiological response connected to an external event. Basically, is the bodily function. In order for the cycle of stress to begin, there must be a stressor. This is usually some kind of external circumstance. It is not our mind, but something external affecting us, like a work deadline, a project, or a scary medical test. For example, we have been having an ailment and now we're going to go for a medical test. So we are getting this stress that medical test is coming up. So stress is a reaction to environmental changes or forces that exceed an individual's resources. Okay, so we get stressed out because we keep on thinking about this physical situation which we are facing. So if you look at the table on the right here, okay, the stress is our body's response. The worry is our mind's response. So when we start overthinking something, we are using our mind. The stress is when our body now starts getting affected. And a lot of us fall sick because of stress. Why? Because the body is affected. The mind now is working overtime such that now the body gets affected. So the stress is the body's response, and the worry is the mind's response. So if stress and worry are the symptoms, then what is anxiety? Anxiety is the addition. Anxiety has what they call a cognitive element, which is worry, the mind element, and then the physiological response, which is the bodily response, which means we experience anxiety both in our mind and our body, and sometimes that can lead to illnesses because we overthink the worry, and then it now affects us physically through stress, and then we suffer from we get an anxiety attack, they call it. So we link it to the Sharira Traya, and it's quite simple actually. Worry is linked to our mind, that is speaking over time. Is linked to the Shukshma Sharira. The stress of our physical body is our response by increased blood pressure, higher pulse rates, poor sleep. You want to sleep at night, we cannot sleep. So instead of having good 7-8 hours of sleep, you sleep 3-4 hours because your mind, the moment you wake up, you think about it. The moment you wake up, you think about it. You have a terrible sleep. Okay? All this is affecting your Sthula Sharira. So your Shukshma Sharira is affected. Your Sthula Sharira is also affected. Now, the stress plus the worry then creates anxiety that affects our feelings, our Karana Sharira, which then causes further deterioration because the Karana Sharira basically feeds the Shukshma Sharira, which feeds into the Sthula Sharira. So now with the Karana Sharira, anxiety is hitting us. Our body is going to get affected. Our mind is affected. Okay, leads to further deterioration. Okay, I'll just do this terminology and then we will stop for the evening. So the Vedic scriptures, what does it say about worry? The Vedic scripture says, Swasana Vichinta Antargarsha Anudada Pavati, which means Swasana means breath, respiration. Vichinta, the thoughts. Antargrasha is the friction. Anunada is the vibration. Bhavati comes to be. Basically, if you put it into a nice reading sentence, it means from thoughts come to be the internal friction in our breath. Because of the thoughts, we now don't breathe properly. That's why they say when you have a problem, take deep breaths, because your breath is affected when you're worried. So from thoughts, there's a friction, and the friction is felt through vibrations in the breath. So the breath is not smooth anymore. It's very interrupted. Okay? So the first remedy is don't keep dwelling on the past. So whatever situation has happened in the past is over. Okay? We are into problem solving. Something happened in the past, there's a problem today, let's solve it today. So don't keep dwelling on the past and have anxiety of the future. Internal friction is caused in the breath that lead to manomaya yoksha, mind-formed sheath. Okay, don't worry about that terminology. So focus basically what Bhagavan and the Vedic scriptures are telling us here so far is focus on the present. We have a situation, focus on the present, make plans now, work on them. Leave the results, the future to Bhagavan. What happened? I made a mistake yesterday or something went wrong yesterday. I have the situation today. Let me do my best to address it today and now and forget about the future. What is going to happen? I am just going to focus on making plans and working on them right now. Leave the results to Bhagavan. So don't let negativity set in so that the friction now in our breath, referred to as the pranamaya kosha, and then the manomaya kosha has a more dampened amplitude, so that friction in our breath is also reduced. Okay, so this is not easy to understand. And if we go into a few, I think another 3 or 4 slides on this, but we shall take a pause here. So far, what your takeaways for today's satsang on these Vedic thoughts are: what is the definition of worry? Worry is related to the mind. The Shukshma Sharira, mind related. Then you have stress, which is affecting your physical body, which is your Sthula Sharira. And the anxiety is what we suffer from both the worry affecting our mind and the stress, which is affecting our body. So when we add that together, we suffer from anxiety. And that is the Karana Sharira. So what we need to do, whatever situation is arisen, focus on the present, work on it today, leave the results to Bhagavan, but do something today. So rather than focus on the negativity of the situation that has arisen, focus on what can be done, make it positive, so that we can then alleviate ourselves from that situation. Okay? Any questions, please? Okay, Prabhuji, Mataji, thank you. You can see there are a few more slides, but it was going to be heavy. So the good thing is we have a next session in 2 weeks' time. But you have the slides with you, so please read them in advance. It will really help you to understand what value is worry. Worry has a good value for us because it helps us identify situations, problems, and we can extract ourselves from those difficult situations to have a positive outcome. So worry has a good significance in that sense.